Hi. Okay, so we're going to do a section of notes from a really big presentation. And so we're going to do it in very small pieces, just so we can understand as much as possible because there's so much within this information. So I know some of you have these notes pulled up on your computer, and then you probably want to watch this video at the same time. So a way you can do that is on your keyboard, to the left of the space bar, you'll notice there's this little button with 4 squares, or it's the Windows icon. If you press that button and one of the arrows to the right or the left, so like let's do the left arrow. So I press that button. Oops, there you go, that button, left arrow. It should do this, right? And then if you want to, you might have a whole bunch of windows pop up on this side, and you can pick one of those to go to the right side, or like I can pick this one and go Windows button, the 4 squares, and to the right. And you can put them right next to each other, so you can have your notes on one side and your video on the other. If you need more help with that, let me know. But I'm just trying to help you make this as easy as possible here. So let's take a look at, this is actually where we're going to end our notes for today. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. So we're going to be focusing on communities today. But before we do that, let's back up a little bit. So we are still talking ecology, right? And ecology takes a while to talk about because there's so many things it depends on. There's so many variables that it depends on. So ecology is the study of organism interactions, with each other and the environment. So remember, we are talking about the processes that occur at multiple levels of organization on Earth, and each level of organization emerges from the processes of the level below it. So these should look familiar down here, right? We've got organism, population, community, ecosystem, biome, biosphere. We've talked about those before. In fact, you had a biojournal over those as well. So we know that an organism is one individual living thing. A population is multiple of the same organisms. Then we've got a community, which is all the living things in the environment. Ecosystem is living and non-living. Biome includes climate. And then biosphere is all of the area where life occurs on Earth. So we're going to focus on community. All of the populations in a contiguous, or you can say a certain area. That's just a fancy word. And properties emerge from interactions in the community. All that means is a community gets its characteristics from the populations, from the interactions between the populations in the community. So the big questions we're going to be looking at are, how are communities structured, and how do the interactions of species in a community lead to emergent properties, or those characteristics. So we're eventually going to try and get through all of this, which I know it looks like a lot, but there's such good information on here and some really cool stuff as well. We're going to do it very, very, in very, very small increments though. So today, if you notice looking at the notes, it's really small and we should be done here in a couple of minutes. We're eventually going to get through all of these different interactions. So these are how species can interact with each other. So if you hear growling, that's my daughter. But one of the interactions I know you're familiar with is predation, right? Predation, a predator killing a prey. You know that one. Today, we're going to focus on competition. And we're going to talk about why there's this little minus sign here and what that means. Oh my, hold on. Daughter got her foot stuck. Oh, here you go. Okay. So, for competition, that's a contest between individuals for shared resources. So that could be competing for water, competing for food, competing for space to live, right? And it's called, I remember I told you to pay attention to that minus sign. It's a minus interaction because neither species benefits from competition. Both species are hurt. So it's a minus interaction. It can be between two different species, so like between a coyote and a mountain lion competing for rabbits, or it can be within a species, so a population of coyotes all competing for rabbits. And we're going to start out by talking about how competition impacts an organism's niche. We've talked about this word with your mealworms. So if you remember talking about the mealworm's niche, it was the mealworm's role. And remember, mealworms are decomposers, so that was part of its niche. You could also say that, we talked about the fact that it digested styrofoam. It had the ability to break down styrofoam. That would be part of its niche. It's its role in the environment. So the reason we're talking about this with competition is because competition limits an organism's niche. It makes it smaller. An organism can't have as big of a role in its environment if it has to compete with other things. So here's a little example of the two types. There's a fundamental niche and a realized niche. Fundamental niche means that here's the maximum possible niche. Here's the maximum role an organism can have in its environment. But what you see in real life is the realized niche. That is its actual niche. Here's where it actually has to live because of competition. So looking at this picture here, which I know you have this picture on your notes, there are two species of barnacles. So barnacles are little mollusks, and they cling to rocks and to boats. And if we look at the mollusk, let's look at there's a brown one and there's a blue one, right? This brown one in real life, so this would be the realized niche. In real life, within this habitat, the brown one lives up here. This is its realized niche, is to live up on the rock and doing its role, right? Remember, the niche is its role, not the habitat itself, but what it can do. So its role would be to live out of the water and nutrients from living on the rock. However, if we take away the competition with the little blue guy right here, we learn that its fundamental niche is actually this whole area. So it being in the water and eating some of those organisms as well could be part of its fundamental niche, but we don't know that unless we remove the competition. So to put it simply, fundamental niche is what it could do if there was no competition. Realized niche is where it actually what it actually does because of competition. Your realized niche is always going to be smaller than your fundamental niche. So if we go back, so let's get out of this for a second and look at your notes here. Ecology is the study of, and we can go all the way back just in case you weren't looking at the same time here. Ecology is the study of organism interactions with each other and the environment. Looking at number 1. For number 2, ecological processes occur at multiple levels of organization. And the reason I wanted you to put that on there is because we've talked about levels of organization as being one of our properties of life. Do you remember what the other 5 properties are? Homeostasis, organization, growth and development, adaptation, reproduction, metabolism. For number 3, we are going to focus on community. So let's go skip ahead one. Community is all of the populations in a determined area. Many interactions contribute to a community's properties. Competition is interaction within a species. I put down that it's a minus because neither species benefits. And it's a contest between individuals for shared, and let's go find that over here. Oh boy. For shared resources. So what is an example of a shared resource is one of the questions on here. So an example of a... Come here, you. There you go. This is the one making all the noise over here. So an example of a shared resource would be, what is something that we need that other organisms need? So it says, think of the game we played. We didn't get to play this game, so I'm actually going to delete that from here. Yeah, because we did not play that game in class. So think of an example of a shared resource. So what is something that we need that other organisms need? So you could be thinking of water, space, right? We have to compete with other organisms for space. For number 4, blank all of an organism's interactions in its environment. So that would also be called the organism's role. That's its niche, all of an organism's interactions in its environment. Fundamental niche is the maximum possible niche. Remember, it's that big one. You are straight up growling. And realized niche is the actual niche. So fundamental niche is the big one. Realized is what it actually is. And then what is the difference between an organism's habitat and its ecological niche? It actually says it right below that. You do not have to answer that question. It says it right here. A niche supports and describes a single species and its role in the environment, while a habitat is where a community resides. So one habitat can support many niches. One of the biggest struggles that people have is thinking that niche and habitat are the same thing, and they are not. So I had to be really careful when I was talking about the barnacles, because it's not about where they live in that picture, it's about what they're doing. So we don't know that the brown barnacle can take organisms from the water until we see its fundamental niche. You don't have anything to turn in here. I just want to make sure that you can get those notes down. Tomorrow will be the part where you turn something in. If you have questions, you can ask me or Mrs. Knoll or this baby, and she will just growl at you. But we miss you guys. Hope you're doing well.